Here are 10 Canadian artists who owned 1975. There was so much going on in Canadian music in 75. Such talent in almost all the genres. We start with the Guess Who. This was the year that the band disbanded. But leading up to 1975, let's just say they've had more hits, album and singles-wise, than anyone else on this list. Leading up to 75. Wheat Feels Sold in 1968, followed by Canned Wheat, American Woman in 1970, which went number 1 in Canada and number 9 in the US. The same year, Share the Land. And the last few, Road Food, which reached number 14, Flavors at 1974, which peaked at number 28, and Power in the Music in 1975. Burton Cumming disbanded the band in the summer of 75, but even that year they still had a number 15 Canadian hit and a number 28 hit called Dancing Fool. We all remember that. And some of their biggest hits, of course, Star Baby, Rain Dance, Albert Flasher, Hang On to Your Life, Share the Land, Hand-Me-Down World, American Woman, No Time, Undone, Laughing in These Eyes. In 75, the Guess Who were Burton Cummings on keys and vocals, Bill Wallace on bass and vocals, Gary Peterson the drummer, Dominic Triano is guitarist. Number 9, Murray McLaughlin. Born in Paisley, Scotland and raised in Toronto, the singer-songwriter was mostly folk and country influenced, but he gained a lot of recognition in the early 1970s. He did major tours in Canada in the mid-70s, and some of the tunes that we knew, Child Song about leaving home in 1970, Farmer's Song in 73, and Down by the Henry Moore in 1975. His albums leading up to the mid-70s, Songs from the Street in 71, Murray McLaughlin in 72, Day-to-Day Dust 73, and Sweeping the Spotlight Away in 1974. The 75 album, Only the Silence Remains. It charted at number 39 on the Canadian charts. Number 8, Chilliwack. They were formed in Vancouver, and they're known for their harmonic melodies surrounded around Bill Henderson's voice. In 75, the band was Henderson on vocals and guitar, Glenn Miller bass, Ross Turney on drums, and Howard Froese on guitars and keyboards. They were known for the 73 hit Lonesome Mary, number 9 in Canada, and Crazy Talk, which reached number 10 in Canada and number 98 in the US. Albums leading up to 75, 2 named Chilliwack, the first one charting at number 63 in Canada, the second number 10 in Canada and 210 in the US. Then there was All Over You in 72. It peaked at number 40 in the Canadian charts, and Rocker Box in 1975, a band that was known for touring extensively across the country. Number 7, the Stampeders, Rich Dodson, Ronnie King, and Kim Burley. Now there's a trio that played every hockey arena across the country in 1975. They were known for Sweet City Woman, which was their first US hit, peaked at number 8 and number 1 in Canada. Devil You, a number 8 Canadian hit. Wild Eyes, that peaked at number 2 and hit the road jack in 1975 at number 6. Their albums, Against the Grain, Carrying On, Rubes, Dudes, and Roadies, From the Fire, and then Steamin', that was their 1975 album, which peaked at number 22. Number 6, Rush, a band that didn't find their worldwide fame or their clear path till 1976 in the album 2112. The band members, not that we really have to tell you who they are, everyone knows, Geddy Lee on vocals and bass, Alex Lifeson on guitar, and Neil Peart, the drummer, who we lost a few years ago, who was one of the greatest Canadian talents of all time. There were lots of tours, and of course, leading up to 75, they were known for Working Man from 1974 and Fly By Night. By the mid-70s, they'd released 3 albums. They're self-titled. In 74, reached number 105 on the US charts and number 86 in Canada. Fly By Night in 75, a number 9 album and 113 in the US, and Caress of Steel, which was a disappointment for the band. It peaked at number 160 in Canada and 148 in the US. Number 5, April Wine. In the mid-70s, the band was Miles Goodwin, their leader, on vocals and guitar, Jim Clench on bass and vocals, Gary Moffat guitar and vocals, and Jerry Mercer on drums. They were known for You Could Have Been a Lady, which was a number 2 hit in Canada and number 32 in the US. The Elton John cover Bad Side of the Moon from 1972, which reached number 16 in Canada. Weeping Widow, a number 4 hit the following year. And Tonight's a Wonderful Time to Fall in Love in 1975. They had many singles from their 75 album, which we'll get to in a second. They had 4 records, not counting the live one, which brought us to the mid-70s. The self-titled, or the Feet album in 71. On Record the following year, a number 35 album in Canada, and Electric Jewels from 1973. But one of their biggest albums, a 2-time platinum record, was Stand Back, which had multiple singles. In 1975, April Wine were one of the biggest bands in Canada. Number 4, Bachman Turner Overdrive. They were seriously on top of the world, not only in Canada. The lineup in 75, Randy Bachman guitar and vocals, Robbie Bachman on drums, Fred Turner on bass and vocals, and Blair Thornton on guitar and vocals. Their big songs, Let It Ride in 1974, reached number 3 in Canada, 23 in the US. Taking Care of Business, another number 3 hit in Canada. You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet was number 1 in Canada and the US. And Roll On Down the Highway in 1975, number 4 in Canada, number 14 in the US. The albums are self-titled in 73, followed by BTO 2, Not Fragile, some say their best album in 1974, and then Four Wheel Drive in 1975. Number 3, Gordon Lightfoot, one of the most successful singer-songwriters in the history of Canadian music. Known for If You Could Read My Mind from 1970, Sundown 3 years later, Carefree Highway in 74, and Rainy Day People right smack in the middle of the 70s in 1975. Some of his bigger albums, Don Quixote, which was a number 1 hit in Canada, same as Sundown in 74, number 1 in both Canada and the US, and Cold on the Shoulder. That one peaked at number 3 in Canada and number 10 in the US. Number 2, Joni Mitchell, another source of true Canadian pride for anyone who took this journey with her and bought those albums. She was known for Big Yellow Taxi from 1970, You Turn Me On My Radio 2 years later, Help Me from 74, and Free Man in Paris from the same year. Her big albums, Clouds, a number 22 Canadian hit, Ladies of the Canyon, peaked at number 16. The number 9 album, Blue, which some consider her best work, it peaked at number 15 in the US. For the Roses in 72, Court and Spark, which was number 1 in Canada and number 2 in the US. Miles of Isles, and then Hissing of Summer Lawns, which was her number 7 hit in 1975, number 4 in the US. And number 1, and whenever we do these, Neil Young seems to end up at number 1 on a lot of these different charts. Born in Toronto, raised in Winnipeg, member of Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and known solo-wise for Heart of Gold in 72 and Old Man the same year. Everyone knows the albums After the Gold Rush from 1970, both top 10 albums in Canada and the US. Harvest, number 1 in both Canada and the US. That was in 72. Time Fades Away, On the Beach, in his 1975 album Tonight's the Night, which peaked at number 12 in Canada and 25 in the US. There you have it, our list of the Canadian artists who basically owned 1975. If this one is successful, we'll do more from the 1970s and figure out who was on top for all those great Canuck artists, that's for sure. Remember, if you want to donate to the channel, there's a PayPal link at the very top of the description. You can join our Patreon, get early access to all our videos, and we have a swag store where you can buy Rock History Canada t-shirts, caps, jackets, and a lot more. Subscribe to our channel, share our videos, comment on them, and like them. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Canada.